Marvin Vettori versus Kevin Holland. Now, what really happened in this fight? A shutout, dominant performance by Marvin Vettori using his wrestling, his striking skill, counter-punching, size, and strength advantage to completely take over the fight from almost start to finish. Holland had a few moments in the fight, but ultimately he did kind of mess those up in a very similar way he did against Derek Brunson. When you saw Kevin Holland hurt Marvin Vettori in the 5th round, Marvin Vettori is pretty tired at this point, and he rushes in with his own combination. Holland was able to move away from all the punches, and Vettori, uncharacteristically, due to how tired he was getting, he sits in place after his punches and does nothing afterward. This is something he never did in the fight. He just stood there defenseless, no guard, no takedown after the punches, no slipping, nothing. Just sits there to get caught by Kevin Holland's combination. Kevin Holland catches Marvin Vettori with a big 3-2 combination. A looping left hook that almost takes the form of an overhand, and then catches Vettori in space with a long right cross that stuns him. Instead of capitalizing on this opportunity with the advantages that he has over Vettori, which comes with speed and reach, a huge reach advantage, 81-inch reach compared to Vettori 74, you would have to think that someone like Holland in his situation would like to stay at his distance and pick at him like a sniper. Someone like Israel Adesanya would do, right? But instead of being composed and finding the finish through his advantages, he rushed into Marvin Vettori's range and got caught with a single leg takedown. Lost composure and excitement that he was going to probably knock out Marvin Vettori after being down 4 rounds. And even though Vettori didn't have the best grip for the single leg takedown, he transitions right into a double leg very quickly as Holland goes to sprawl on top of him, but the size and strength difference plays a factor here. You can see how hard Holland is trying to fight this off, but Vettori doesn't even allow him to fully sprawl in time. He's able to put enough weight forward, making Holland sprawl upright, so he's easily forced backwards. And there was no resistance after this. Marvin Vettori has a huge strength advantage over Kevin Holland. Now, this sequence is something similar to what happened with Derek Brunson. We saw in the Derek Brunson fight that Kevin Holland hurt him as well with his long punches, catching him at the end of them, only to throw that away and rush forward into the wrestler's distance and get taken to the ground. You can't knock Kevin Holland too much for that because, yes, in one aspect, he did fight Derek Brunson, who was probably the best wrestler in the division, and paid dearly for rushing in too much instead of staying at his range. But he didn't have much preparation for the Marvin Vettori fight. He took this fight on short notice, so how much of a change could you see from Kevin Holland? But that is only speculation. The fact of the matter is, Kevin Holland does this in every single fight, so it seems to be some sort of instinct of his, something that triggers him to do this whenever he sees that the opponent's hurt. It's worked plenty of times throughout his career, but against the upper echelon of the division, this is not going to work out the same. He's able to catch lower level competition with those kind of blitzing punches from such a long guy. The veterans of this division are going to take advantage of that, just like Vettori and just like Derek Brunson did. And that was the main moment from Kevin Holland, ultimately thrown away for his recklessness. And as we talk about the strength, I mean, multiple takedowns throughout the fight that Vettori just overpowered him. Not even the best technical takedowns. Some of them were really nice, but there were some of them where he lost position and lost footing, ultimately losing balance, but still able to be heavy enough to crush Holland into the mat. Vettori later was switching opposite angles on Kevin Holland, which would get him off balance and kind of catch him by surprise, but after so many of them, you start to see that Holland was trying to defend some of them, and Vettori simply just overpowered him in those positions as well. There were literally a couple takedowns where, instead of having the angle to take on Kevin Holland, he pulled Holland forward into the angle that he wanted. That's crazy. Like, think about, can someone do that to some of the stronger guys of the UFC? He literally would pull Kevin Holland into the angle he wanted on him. That is crazy to think about. And that's just evident that Kevin Holland is probably not in the right weight class. Multiple times he came in underweight, weighing around 183 pounds. The bigger middleweights cannot afford to do that. They are way too big to take off an extra pound or two off of the weight limit. And Kevin Holland is talking about in the past that he could probably make 170. And if that's the case, man, that is probably the home he needs, because these bigger guys that are really good with the wrestling, use their strength as an advantage, they're going to take that advantage on Kevin Holland easily. You just saw it with the veterans right here. Everybody else is going to do that. Because it's not so much the striking that Kevin Holland is lacking in. He's not losing so much in the striking department. It's only really the wrestling. And the strength factor of that is playing too big in those roles for Kevin Holland to cover ground for. But I really want to touch on some of the things that Marvin Vettori was doing out there, especially with his striking, because a lot of his striking skill actually went unnoticed in the fight. For instance, we all know that Marvin Vettori's most used tactic in a fight is to pull on punches and counter with the left hand. He's exceptional at doing this. Even though he has the shorter reach, he was still able to do this against Kevin Holland of all people. There were a few times where he would get caught at the end of the punch because in theory, you don't want to pull on the longer fighter. You're going to be pulling a little bit too far away, and then you have to rebound and cover the ground again forward to land your punch on them. So Marvin Vettori found that early that pulling on the longer guy was probably not the best thing to do. So he simply just switched it up to slipping on the outside of the right straight. So by doing this, we saw multiple things from Marvin Vettori. For instance, in the first round, when we go to 3 minutes and 35 seconds, he's going to hand fight with Holland, but Holland's the first one to act. He wants to trap and parry the lead hand from Marvin Vettori, all while taking the outside foot in order to line up his right hand on the opposite stance fighter. Marvin Vettori, though, sees the punch coming from a mile away due to the fact that Kevin Holland flares out his elbow every time he throws the right hand. At such a far distance, it becomes even more obvious of a weapon. This is why you just want to pop it out from your stance with no flare up and no telegraph at all. It's better to touch them than to load up with power. Well, Vettori has a slick outside slip as well as parrying the punch, causing a great retraction. But Vettori doesn't attack right away. He wants a sure angle. This is very different than what Kevin Holland's trying to do. Kevin Holland's just trying to deliver damage from his distance without really setting it up with assurance. Even though Marvin Vettori's a mad lad, the guy's always angry. He doesn't fight that way in the cage necessarily. He's a lot smarter than people give him credit. So instead of attacking right away, he goes in to fill in his left space or the space on Kevin Holland's right side. Notice how he pivots and takes a step to the left with his back foot. Now look at the angle that they are in. If Kevin Holland wants to retreat away, he can only retreat 2 directions now. He cannot move into his right because that space is filled up by Marvin Vettori. He can move backwards into the cage, which is going to be risky because ultimately maybe not the punch is going to land from that distance, but the takedown is going to follow right afterward, which is a combination that Marvin Vettori has landed a few times in the fight. So Kevin Holland's best way to get away from Marvin Vettori and from a takedown and from the cage is of course to move out into his left, rotate out that direction. So Vettori parries the lead hand and shows Holland his left, his powerful left cross, which gets a really good reaction out of Kevin Holland, hopping diagonally into the parallel stance so he can easily move out laterally a lot better than linearly. He wants to take off the sharp angle, but the left hand was only a fake, and Marvin Vettori is using this opportunity to intercept Kevin Holland with his right hand. Ultimately, Holland was able to barely block the punch in time. But more than just landing the punch, this shows the level that Marvin Vettori is fighting on. He parried a right cross, pivoted to his left to fill in the space, showed the left hand to reinforce Holland's reaction to move out into his left, gets him to take a parallel stance, which is probably the most risky stance you want to take. It's the least defensive stance you can have, only to intercept him off that side with one punch, with one right hook. Intelligent stuff by Marvin Vettori. There's another sequence in the second round where Vettori pressures Holland close to the cage and looks to hand fight with Holland. He pushes Holland's lead hand back as Holland goes to attack with it right afterward with a long right hook. The fact that he trapped the lead hand and pushed it back means that he has notice on that left hand. If Holland's going to go attack with it, Marvin Vettori already checked that box and is focused on that side. Pretty much put a tracker on that hand so he always knows when it's going to fly out there, allowing him to pull back on the longer Kevin Holland confidently and counters Kevin Holland with a big check right hook. A few moments later, you see that sort of combination from Vettori where he's able to throw the left hand, then mix it up with the takedown. He goes again to hand fight. Kevin Holland does the same thing as before where he wants to trap and parry the lead hand to throw his long right. Vettori is able to again slip on the outside of it, parry the punch, opening up that side for his left hand, just touches Holland at the end of the punch, no real big impact, but Vettori is not only satisfied with that. He sees the opening that Holland gives him right after the blow. He leans away to get his head away from the punch, which is the reason why he didn't get fully impacted by it. But when he leans back, he's ultimately going to expose his hips for the double leg takedown. And then when we later go to the third round, 4 minutes and 46 seconds, you see Vettori able to manipulate Kevin Holland by throwing so many things up high. And when I mean up high, I mean really high up, to get Holland's hands to always rise and focus on defending something that's coming up high, which is ultimately going to expose his body, hips, and legs. So notice Vettori is trapping the lead hand, and he's trapping it up really high, grabbing onto it and lifting Holland's hand up. So because of the pressure and the high trapping, Kevin Holland's in a very uncomfortable position right now. So he goes for a push kick, knowing that his hands are occupied by Vettori. He needs to use his legs in order to get away. But instead of moving around, he attempts to push Vettori away, which ultimately misses. Vettori goes in for a right hook, getting Kevin Holland to guard up high, fakes the left hook and touches him on that side. Not only a fake, he actually touches Kevin Holland up there, making Kevin Holland instinctively react that he blocked the punch that was coming for his head, ultimately keeping Kevin Holland's hands up to defend the onslaught. But It exposes the hips, Vettori goes down under and gets an easy double leg takedown. You see later in the third round that Kevin Holland flares out a jab, which is easily sought out by Marvin Vettori. He's able to parry it, but instead of parrying it to the side, he interestingly parries it up high. He pushes the hand up over his head, so he sneaks his way under to getting close on Kevin Holland. Knowing that Holland always likes to move his head away from danger, Vettori does not throw the left hand, making Holland ultimately pull on a punch that never came, and allows Vettori to see the whole thing out, to oversee the whole sequence, and steps out even further on the outside. Look at the angle he gets on Kevin Holland with the outside step. This is perfect. He almost has a profile view on Kevin Holland. This is one of the best positions you can ever get in the striking against your opponent. It lands a big left hand, one of the biggest punches of the entire fight. Kevin Holland goes to guard up, and what happens when that happens? Exposes the legs and hips. Here comes Vettori for the double leg takedown. So that's the end of the breakdown, guys. I mean, amazing performance by Marvin Vettori. Yes, Holland took it on short notice. And yes, he's not the caliber of opponent that Vettori wanted, but it's a good performance altogether. He cannot be mad at this whole situation. I mean, other than the Vettori's always mad, he cannot be more angry than he normally is in his resting state. It was a great performance. Vettori deserves a high-ranked opponent. He was supposed to fight Darren Till. Darren Till's probably going to be out for a while. So I like a fight with him and maybe Paulo Costa. Or they do Derek Brunson and Vettori, or he waits until the winner or loser of Whitaker versus Gastelum, because that's happening very soon as well. And as for Kevin Holland, I think he should go down to 170, at least try his hand for one fight to see how he feels down there, because these bigger guys are just too big and too strong for him. It's kind of unfortunate because if he can't make 170, it just further proves that having a 175-pound weight class, going every 10 pounds with each division, is the way to go. It looks like Kevin Holland may be a 175-pound fighter. You know, some of these guys are, as they like to call it, in-betweeners, and they just fit in a weight class that doesn't exist, as unfortunate as that is. So great performance by Marvin Vettori, and I hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown. If you did, make sure to thumbs up. If you enjoyed my content, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.